The last session for this morning plenary to close us out today is an especially special one. We are looking forward to going to lunch after this, but first we want to have a conversation about the inclusive digital future at scale. So really thinking about the marriage of different sectors and partnerships, but all of this together, how we're going towards that ultimate goal together. So for this conversation, I'm really excited. It's an honor to welcome our speakers. We have the Minister Carme Artigas Brugal from Spain. She's the former minister in Spain, and she's currently the co-chair of the AI advisory body at the United Nations. They've had a big week. Also coming up will be our new Vice Chairman and President of Strategic Growth at Mastercard, Ambassador John Huntsman. And then we're also especially excited to welcome the UN Tech Envoy, Amandeep Singh Gill, with the United Nations. Our moderator today is Angela Oduor Lungati, the Executive Director of Ushahidi. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Shana. Now I know that this session is what's holding you all from lunch, but I think this panel is set to be just as brilliant, if not more, than all the ones that we've had this earlier today. So briefly, I run a nonprofit organization called Ushahidi that's been focused on surfacing community-generated data sets to drive impact across various sectors using open source technology for the last 16 years in over 160 countries. Now, this afternoon, we are joined by three amazing global leaders whose careers have spanned business, government, academia, and diplomacy to explore the pivotal role of technology and trust for inclusive growth and meeting the sustainable development goals. Each of them are leading new strategic directions, and in the brief time that we have together, I'm hoping that this conversation will surface their respective experiences in digital transformations and the current environment around digital technology and AI. So Envoy Amandeep, Minister Carme, and Ambassador John, welcome. Really excited to have this conversation with you. Envoy Amandeep, you've been at the forefront of UN's efforts to secure international consensus on digital corporations, and that has included setting recommendations for responsible AI and leveraging technologies to deliver the SDGs. Right now, we know that there are countries and regional bodies that are presenting divergent models for regulating and leveraging AI at the national and multinational level. How are countries across the UN membership determining their strategies for AI, and how are multi-stakeholder partnerships playing a role?
Thank you very much, Angela. It's great to be here. I just want us to first take a moment to savor what has happened this week. On Sunday, the adoption of the pact, which includes the Global Digital Compact as an annex. It was literally like three bullets coming together and hitting each other. The work, the negotiation, the intergovernmental negotiation on the Global Digital Compact, which is like a software refresh of multilateral cooperation on digital technologies after the 2003-2005 discussions. And the second one was the work that Carme co-led with James Maneka on the international governance of AI. So working at warp speed, they produced a set of recommendations, and often those recommendations, read by a lot of people, they make waves, but they don't land in a decision. We managed to land the critical decisions inside the summit in the Global Digital Compact. And the third bullet that came together was the new issues around building an inclusive digital economy that benefits everyone. Big place for data, of course, in that, data for development. I see some friends here in the room who've been very active in that space. We got there. So from those kind of G20, G7 discussions, data for development, digital public infrastructure, some of these issues have now become global. They have been accepted globally. So that's hugely important. It's very exciting for our work ahead. Just one short sentence on how countries work. I think by and large the mood is collaborative, but we have to keep nurturing the spirit of collaboration. There are geopolitical winds, there's a lot of difficulties, so work would be needed as we go forward.
Thank you so much. Minister Carme, Spain made significant investments in digital transformation as part of its economic recovery during the pandemic. I think it's called Digital Spain 2025, under your leadership as a Secretary of State of Digitalization and AI. What do you think that other countries can learn from your experience in Spain in adopting digitalization and AI initiatives, and also setting the digital agenda strategy?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting to this panel. Yes, our experience with the pandemic was that because of the pandemic, we had access to the next generation funds that were the way the European Union recovered from this crisis in a totally different way than the previous crisis in 2008, that was with reduction of public investment. I think we learned the lesson, and Europe decided that the only way to move forward from that crisis was to invest in infrastructures and provide this public investment that any single country could afford by themselves. And I think we made a very, very good use of that opportunity. We had access to 140 billion euros, and we devoted 30% of this to digital transformation and 40% of it to the green transition. So what we knew is that we were not going to use that money to be back to the situation we were before the pandemic. That we need to exit the pandemic in a totally different situation, just doing the long-term transformations that our economy required. Why? Because we had a GDP too much dependent on mobility, which was suffering during the pandemic. So on tourism, on the car industry, on real estate. And what we did is invest in digital transformation and economic transition. Nowadays, the digital economy stands for 24% of global GDP, and that transformation has been done only in 4 years. And what we learn is that you need to approach this in a very multi-stakeholder way. We had to involve the public, the private sector. We had to do at the same time short-term, mid-term, and long-term bets. Short-term is leaving no one behind, especially small and medium businesses. In mid-term, we had to transform the industry towards a digital industry, and long-term, investing in AI or quantum computing or new technologies on the 5-10-year horizon. I think that's the key. You cannot just point to one target. You need to have a more comprehensive, holistic view for that.
Thank you so much. Ambassador John, you've recently joined Mastercard. How has your previous experience in diplomacy and public service shaped your views and technology's role in creating social impact in the private sector?
Thank you, Angela. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I welcome all of you to this event that is hosted by our Center for Inclusive Growth, which is the heart and soul of what we do at Mastercard. It's important to every single one of us here. And when we say it, we're very sincere about it. As a diplomat, as Amandeep is, and a practitioner of politics, it means you're accustomed to creating bodies that produce results and progress an issue. I've never been more optimistic about what the digital transition can mean for the world and how it will empower individuals who otherwise would not have it. The question becomes how we get from point A to point B without leaving people behind and without the profit motive crowding out a sense of equality in the journey. So the events of last week with OpenAI going toward the profit motive. I have nothing against the profit motive, but let's ensure that this doesn't become all-consuming in terms of the journey that we're taking, which is going to be so important for humanity. So we had the PC revolution. We had the internet revolution, which was going to bring us all together. And it's left a wake of division and mental health challenges, to be quite frank, particularly among our young people. And I think we have to understand that the partnerships that we build, public and private, that the stakeholders, which are almost countless, coming together to create a code of conduct as we go forward, I think will be very important. And as I look at the multiplicity of stakeholders, from federal to state to the courts to NGOs to private sector, just to name a few, I would say that Amandeep has the most important job in the world right now. And I'm delighted that somebody of his caliber is in charge, because this could produce some enormously powerful results in the digital transition and empowering people with greater knowledge, access to education, opportunities, jobs, healthcare, in ways that we have never imagined before. So we want to be part of this. We are part of it. We've been deep into this. Data is the seed corn for AI, and we are deep in data, and we like to use that data for good. And we think that we will continue to do that as we go forward.
Amazing. So if I'm picking up on something that's common across all the answers you've given me, the cooperation bit is extremely key. This idea around public-private partnerships is key. And just kind of picking up on a point you made around optimism, I think one of my big takeaways from today's conversations has been this concept of holding on to hope, but also being pragmatic about the things that we need to do to realize the future that we seek. So I'm curious, this is a question for each of you. Looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years, what do you believe are the most critical steps that we need to take now to ensure that AI delivers on its promise for positive social impact? And if I could start with you, Ambassador John, please.
Well, we're well into a digital transition that began some time ago, and I think it's instructive to look at the lessons learned. What has it done for humanity? Where have we misfired? What governing structures have been good versus less good? And let history be our guide. And I think that's the most important thing that we can carry with us over the next 5 to 10 years. But I think the focus on this, on the inclusive nature of what we're embarking on, must be part of it, because the divisions globally are too profound. And the thought that this falls victim to US-China competition like everything else would be a mistake. So how do you corral the right stakeholders with the right point of view and the right endpoints in mind, where we can land this, or at least continue its evolution over the next 5 to 10 years in ways where it would be the most productive thing that humanity has ever embarked upon?
Thank you. Minister Carme?
Working for 1 year with an exceptional opportunity to lead 39 brilliant minds for this work, but also consulting more than 2,000 experts all over the world makes me feel very positive on the potentiality of the technology and the huge opportunities it can bring, for example, for long-term issues unsolved on SDGs, for example, how AI can support public health, education, agriculture optimization. But if this is left ungoverned, that can exacerbate the existing divides and make it even worse. And we can have really what we have seen, problems of inclusion, we have problems of accountability, we have problems on implementation. And I think that what I would like to see in 5 years' time is that all our recommendations are in place and we have managed to share the benefits of this technology, and that we put people in the center of the decisions on the limits of technology. We can compete for market share, we can compete for technology leadership, but we cannot compete for safety and we cannot compete for human rights. And I think the work that Amandeep has done and the proposal of the Secretary General and the great, I would say, diplomatic work that has been done to adoption is as good as the capacity to implement it in a reasonable short term, because otherwise we are not going to be able to revert back the harm we can make to societies and also to people.
Thank you so much. And Amandeep?
I think John and Carme made a profound point each, which is relevant for the time horizon that we're talking about. I think Carme's point about, Spain used the COVID crisis as an opportunity to invest in the green transition, the digital transition. Those twin transitions are going to go together. So the short term and the long term start at the same time. We can't wait for the long term to start at some other time. So we have to be more strategic about what's the future digital economy and how do we make sure that we have an inclusive digital economy starting today. This requires leaders' capacity, public officials' capacity, collaboration within regions and across regions. And John's point about lessons from the past, I think this is very important because there are societal impacts that we are only beginning to realize. Mental health distraction has been there, but shifts in the workplace, there are many other consequences that are coming at us. So we need to therefore have a very sophisticated understanding of technology's implication. The past is not going to be a good guide in some ways for AI in particular. So this idea of a scientific panel coming out with regular assessment. And we also need to be more collaborative in terms of international learning, dampening the competition, if you will, coming together in this international policy dialogue on AI governance so we can learn from each other, pick signals, build a common vocabulary. And finally, the most important thing, common benefits, how AI's benefits can be shared. How can we think about enablers, access to compute, access to data, talent, etc., particularly in Africa where, as you know, Angela, very well, 30 to 40% of the global workforce is going to come from Africa very shortly. So by investing there, making sure we get our AI future right.
Thank you all. Now, I realize that we don't have that much time, but I want to give each of you at least a minute to give some final remarks. I know this conversation is very interesting and could go on and on, but I want to be mindful of each of your schedules. What is one thing that you would like to leave this audience with, to go out with, say, a call to action?
That, to my mind, speed is critical. Because when I see, as a former governor myself, governors throughout the United States, and I'm speaking very parochially as an American, begin to appoint special advisors for AI. What does that mean? It means they're going to straight away look at regulation. So how do you balance the regulatory side, the governance side, with the innovation side, so we don't stifle innovation that ultimately could cure human disease, could address environmental catastrophes, whatever it might be? I think speed is going to be critical. We need to get our act together.
Thank you. Minister Carme?
Well, following on that point, I think governance or regulation is not against innovation. I think sometimes regulation is useful to create, I would say, trust. And I think that one of the most innovators of adoption of AI and therefore of the opportunities is lack of trust. Seeing is believing, that sentence doesn't work anymore. So we cannot trust what we see, we cannot trust what we listen to, and we can trust what we read. We cannot trust the black boxes because these are mostly developed by private companies which are not, make all the research public. And this is one. In order to build trust, we need to build transparency mechanisms and accountability mechanisms. But the future is not yet written. And sometimes there is a feeling with the tech industry at the speed of development that this is inevitable, that we cannot decide what is the outcome of technology. We cannot decide the limits, and this is not true. This is an example that this is an effort that no single company can do, no nation can do, no region can do, because implications are huge. But we should be part of the conversation, and we should put the limits of technology. And recently, Brazil has banned X. So there are governments that are taking a decision and imposing the rules. I think when we talk about governance, we don't see it as innovator, we see it as an enabler to create trust with consumers, trust with citizens, and therefore that this is an adoption that we can take with trust to that all the benefits are equally distributed.
Thank you. Amandeep?
I think we have to strike a balance, and business, society, and government have to work together to avoid these kind of extreme swings in a sense. So there's more certainty that way. And we have to be agile. I think many of our policy tools are 19th century, 20th century. They are not fit for purpose. So how can we accordion in and out the regulation side? I think this is an art to be learned. It's an art as much as it is a science. And that way you get the trust and you also keep the innovation going. And I think speaking internationally from my perspective, we need to have a tiered approach. So there's a lot that can be done in the middle, which is the national regulatory space. And governance is not regulation, by the way, and Carme makes this point very eloquently. The EU, what is happening in US and other places. And then there is the industry space, a lot of self-regulation, codes of conduct, as John was saying. responsible practices that are shared. And then there's a thin layer of global governance, which is where essentially you focus on providing global public goods in terms of the scientific assessment, the convening and learning spaces, a way to shape the market, if you will. We are not talking about anti-market stuff. We're talking about shaping the market and making sure that it's more inclusive, that there's more at the base of the pyramid, and the long term is more sustainable, even business-wise. I think sometimes we get caught up in the short term around profit, but I think we have to think about, the 118 countries that are now part of the leading AI governance initiatives, or who are missing out on the digital economy today.
I believe we're out of time, but thank you all so much for your time. If I'm able to kind of pick out a few key themes, collaboration, building trust, and trying to bridge that trust deficit, making sure that we're also learning from our previous experiences, and that the short term and long term are actually one thing. So it's about not only responding in the present, but also thinking towards the future and how we are proactive towards building the future I want to see. So thank you all so much, and thank you all for your time.